Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room, the market.
Everybody count down with me now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! That's right, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. It's the NFL's first day of the new year. It's a new season in the National Football League as free agency kicks off the first day of the new league year. And what a first day it was. Now, I must say, let me give out this disclaimer first. And I'll be giving this disclaimer out every single time I talk to you about free agency because a lot of teams don't understand this. Buyer beware. At this particular market, there is no return policy. There are no refunds. There are no do-overs. You don't get to bring your items and merchandise back to the store if you're not satisfied with the service. Okay? So whatever you get from this market, make sure it is exactly what you want. Make sure you know what you're purchasing because you can't return it. There are no returns. I don't care if you have a receipt. You can't bring your items back to the store. So just know all sales are final. Okay? So the money that you spend at this market, it's gone. You're not getting it back. You can't return your merchandise. It's yours. You paid for it. Keep it. And remember, there's no credit at this store as well. Straight cash, homie, in the words of Randy Moss. Straight cash, homie. So, with that being said, let the spending begin. And teams did exactly that on Tuesday as there was a lot of spending going on in the National Football League. And some teams were not afraid to open up the checkbook. And that's what you have to do. Again, sometimes maybe you overpaid. Maybe. But sometimes that's what you have to do when you're trying to change the whole culture of your franchise. You got to go out and spend money. Guys don't want to come to a losing franchise unless you're shelling out the bucks. And again, money talks, everything else walks. And I told you that before, and I've been telling you that throughout this whole process. Money talks, everything else, it walks. And so this was amazing. Let's start out with Mike Wallace and my observations from day one. Mike Wallace, he cashed in immediately. I mean, literally after free agency started, within 10 minutes, Mike Wallace was in the facility taking a physical and getting ready to sign up his deal. I mean, he didn't waste any time getting to Miami and making that thing final. And why would he? 5 years, $60 to $65 million. We're talking about $12 to $13 million a season. Why wouldn't you rush to go sign that deal? I mean, Mike Wallace really cashed in. He was a huge winner in day one of free agency. But the Miami Dolphins went out and they spent some money. And that's what you have to do when you're a franchise trying to change the culture, trying to change the direction. You want to lure guys to your franchise. And the way to do that is money through the pockets. You can get anyone to come anywhere you like if you have enough money. And so the Dolphins, they just started making it rain all over the place. They shelled out $35 million to L.A.B over 5 years. They turned around. They gave Mike Wallace that huge deal. They weren't finished. They went and got Philip Wheeler from the Oakland Raiders, 5 years, another $23 to $25 million in that department. So the Miami Dolphins were extremely busy in free agency. I mean, they did not waste any time. And yeah, they lost Anthony Fasano in free agency, but trust me, the way that they're lining up guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a tight end in day 2 because the Dolphins are being overly aggressive. They're not wasting any time. And with those signings, you know some guys had to go. I mean, let's face it, they spent a lot of money and they had a lot of money under the cap, but some guys had to go. And so Carlos Dansby and Kevin Burnett were both casualties of free agency. They just had to go because the Dolphins were out spending money like they were on their latest shopping spree. And so it was really a big move by the Dolphins. To go out and spend that kind of money in free agency tells me one thing. You're serious about building this team around Ryan Tannehill, and you're ready to start making some moves to make this team into a very competitive team in the AFC East. And I told you, from the outset, I thought that the Dolphins were that team that could challenge the New England Patriots, but they had to be aggressive in free agency. They have to hit home runs in the draft, and they've already taken care of one half of that equation because they are being ultra aggressive in free agency. And yeah, they might be overspending for some guys, but again, when you're the Dolphins, you're not a winner. Why do I want to come to Miami? You have to convince me. It's not because you're a winning outfit. The dollars have to convince me to come your way. And once you start winning, then guys will take less to come to Miami. But until then, you got to pay them. And it pays to play in the National Football League. If you pay, you can play in the National Football League. And so we're going to see if these moves in day 1 pay off ultimately for the Miami Dolphins. So in addition to those moves, the Dolphins also re-signed Chris Clemens to a 1-year deal. They get their safety back in the fold, so him and Rashad Jones will still be back there manning up the safety position. So I felt like the Dolphins really had an extremely productive day. We don't know what it means right now. On paper, looks excellent. Looks like the Dolphins really bettered their roster today in day 1. They're not finished yet. They still have a lot of money to spend, but they really did a lot of damage in day 1. You also look at another team who told me that they weren't playing around in day 1. The Cleveland Browns were not afraid to spend money. 2 guys, over $70 million, but they're trying to get pressure on the quarterback. And again, if there's one position that you want to spend money on, it's guys getting to the quarterback, defensive end, outside linebacker. You want to spend money on guys that can get to the quarterback. If you can get to the quarterback, you can win games in the National Football League. Guys who can get to the quarterback make a difference. And so the Cleveland Browns went out and spent $40 million on Paul Kruger, which we saw coming. But what we didn't see coming was another $34 million allocated to Desmond Bryant, the defensive tackle / defensive end out of Oakland. 5 years, $34 million for him. 5 years, $40 million for Paul Kruger. The Cleveland Browns went out and spent money to get to the quarterback. And so they're not playing around either. They're trying to make their franchise a lot better than it was in the 2012 season. And I tell you what, the Cleveland Browns, what they said to me is, look, don't lump us in with the Cincinnati Bengals. They're frugal. They're cheap. They're that Ohio team that doesn't want to spend money. That's not us. We're committed to winning. And if it takes us going out and overspending for free agents, because let's face it, we are Cleveland, and we don't have the pedigree that some of these other franchises have that are allowed to pick and choose their free agents and get to pay them whatever they want. We're the Browns. We're not a winner right now. We got to overpay to get guys to come to Cleveland. I hear you. Hey, I'm here. I'm here to stay. I'm ready to play. I'm not afraid to spend. I'll pull out the checkbook. I'm serious about trying to be a contender. And so don't lump me in with that other Ohio team because I'm not afraid to spend money. I'm not afraid to try to better my franchise and better my roster. And they're serious, are the Cleveland Browns. They've got new management, new GM. They're ready to go out and play some ball. And so, look, sometimes you got to overspend. That's just the fact of the matter. Sometimes you got to overspend. And that's what the Browns had to do. That's what the Dolphins had to do. But if you get your man, that's all that matters. Now, look, that's the first part of the equation, is getting your guy. Sometimes you got to overspend to do that. The second part of that equation, though, is having them be productive. Let's hope that the Dolphins and the Browns did not overspend for guys who don't produce for them. So it's okay to overspend when your guy goes out and get it done. What that is called is vindication. When you go out and make a move that a lot of people are criticizing and saying that you're in the wrong for, when it turns out to be the right move, it's vindication. And that's what the Browns and the Dolphins now need out of the money that they spent on Tuesday in day one of free agency. They need vindication now. I need you to go out and prove to everyone else why we gave you the money that we gave you. But make no mistake about it, the Dolphins and the Browns not afraid to open up their checkbooks in day one. So you look at some other teams around the league and what they were able to accomplish in day one. The Vikings, look, Rick Spielman had already come out and said, look, I'm not spending a lot of money in free agency. I'm not going out and I'm not chasing guys like Mike Wallace or Greg Jennings. I'm not spending a lot of money in free agency. We're building this thing through the draft. Understood, Chief. Understood. Message heard loud and clear. And so what did he do in day one of free agency? He took it easy. He took care of in-house free agents. Guys like Jerome Felton, Jerome Simpson, Phil Lodeholt, all brought back by the Minnesota Vikings. So all they did was take care of home. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of home. If you can get guys back, by all means, do just that. I think they also re-signed Aaron Henderson, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So the Vikings taking care of home. And so sometimes that's what you have to do. Just take care of your own guys. If you're not going to spend it on anyone else outside of your locker room, why not spend it in yours? So have no problems with that. Another team in that division in the NFC North got busy in day one, and they needed to be. Frankly, they needed to be aggressive. The Chicago Bears. And they addressed some of the biggest issues along this team early on in free agency, and they needed to. They needed to be aggressive out of the gate. They needed to be chasing down offensive linemen out of the gate. They needed to be looking to get a tight end out of the gate. And what did they do? They went and got an offensive lineman out of the gate. What did they do? They went and got a tight end out of the gate. So the Chicago Bears were definitely looking to be aggressive, and they needed to be. Kudos to the Bears for getting Jermon Bushrod at the right tackle position, at the left tackle position. I don't know where they're going to use him because I'm still hearing that they could be potentially interested in Jake Long. And if that, in fact, is the case, that would mean that one of those guys would be moving to right tackle and the other would be staying at left tackle. So I don't know what the Bears have in mind, but if I'm right, and I think I have a pretty good handle on this, I think that the Bears won't be getting another tackle, or at least not Jake Long services. And so they might be just leaving Jermon Bushrod at left tackle, and then they're going to have to just deal with what they have, because I don't think that they're that bad off at the right tackle position. I just think that they needed a left tackle badly. And so they might go out and get another tackle. I take that back. Their tackle position was in shambles last season. So I take that back. Maybe they might be in the market still for another tackle. But they needed a left tackle. They got one in Jermon Bushrod. They needed a tight end. They got Martellus Bennett. And so the Bears went out and addressed two needs early on in free agency. And that's a good move for the Chicago Bears. They needed to be aggressive and go out and address this offensive line and the tight end position, giving Jay Cutler another weapon to throw to. And they're not finished. They are nowhere near finished, other Chicago Bears. Look for them to continue to be aggressive into day two and moving forward. So let's jump divisions and conferences for that matter. And let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are not playing around. If you haven't taken notice yet, the Chiefs aren't playing around. And in day one, they continue their assault on the offseason. I mean, all the moves that they have made makes them one intriguing team in the 2013 season. I mean, you can't help but look at the Chiefs and think, man, they are really putting some pieces together that makes you think they're not only going to be a serious player in their division, they could be a serious player in the AFC conference as a whole. I mean, in day one of free agency, a lot of quiet moves, but a lot of solid, sound decisions. Moves that help you build your roster and help you become a better football team. Nothing earth-shattering. They've already made a lot of those moves already in free agency. This wasn't about them making a huge splash. It was about getting better as a team. They quietly went and got Mike DeVito, a solid 3-4 defensive end who is stout against the run. They quietly tiptoed down to Miami and got the services of Anthony Fasano at the tight end position after letting Kevin Boss go. And then, don't tell anybody, but they quietly traveled down to New Orleans and got their hands on Chase Daniel. Look, now they have a backup in Chase Daniel that was in New Orleans learning from Drew Brees. He's got a lot of tutelage. If Alex Smith isn't careful, he could find himself in another quarterback battle. And I tell you what, in this league, you need two. You need two running backs. You need two receivers. You need two quarterbacks. You need two. And the Chiefs now have two. The Chiefs are really putting together a serious roster. And they're doing it the right way. I really like what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing, people. I'm telling you this for a reason. The Chiefs are doing some serious work in this offseason. You look at another team in that division. The Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders. They're doing some cleaning. And not just any old cleaning. They're cleaning up their own books and they're being cleaned out by other teams. Poor Oakland Raiders. You start out free agency with no money and you realize quickly that if we don't have any money, we're not going to be able to keep our stuff. Well, they can't keep their stuff as teams started picking away from the little talent that they did have in the 2012 season. Two of the better players on their roster, in Desmond Bryant and Phillip Wheeler on the defensive side of football, gone. First day of free agency. The Browns came in and snatched out Desmond Bryant, signed him to a lucrative long-term deal, one that the Raiders could not even dream of matching. And then Phillip Wheeler was snatched away by the Dolphins. First day of free agency, given a nice, solid deal. Again, something that the Raiders couldn't even match if they wanted to in 5 years, $23 million. And so the Raiders are just stuck with their stuff. And their stuff isn't really good right now. And so they cut ties with Darius Hayward-Bay, their former first-round draft choice. And they cut ties with another guy that this kind of surprised some people, Michael Huff. A lot of people didn't see that coming. He was a free agent just a season ago, and now he's gone from Oakland. And so very interesting moves out of Oakland. But now this Raiders team has some money in free agency to spend. They freed up $12 million or so with those two cuts that they made on Tuesday. And so now the Raiders are cleaning house. Their house has been totally cleaned up, whether it's been other teams reaching in and snatching up players of note and worth, or it's just the Raiders saying, hey, you know what? We're going to shed some more dead weight and see if we can get some new guys. This is all part of the building process for the Raiders. So that was something that I noticed in day one for the Oakland Raiders. Quickly, I want to talk about the Tennessee Titans. I feel like they got their man, and they were very active in free agency in day one. They went out and got their man that they were really coveting in free agency. They made it known. They made no bones about it. They wanted to get Andy Levitre away from the Bills, and that's exactly what they did in day one of free agency, going out and upgrading their guard position and arguably the best offensive lineman in this free agency class. He's by far the best guard available, and we're talking about possibly the best offensive lineman available in free agency goes to the Tennessee Titans. So they instantly upgrade their offensive line, and with the news of Steve Hutchinson retiring, they definitely needed to upgrade at the guard position. So big move for the Titans, and they weren't done there. They needed to get a tight end. Jared Cook Jr. was not going to be back in Tennessee. They already knew this, so they could prepare. And what did they do? First day of free agency, they go out and get the tight end Delaney Walker from the San Francisco 49ers. Here's a guy that I think is waiting, willing, and able to explode onto the scene. He's been in the shadows waiting for his opportunity to start. Here it is. He's in Tennessee now. Now Jake Locker has a tight end to throw the football to. He had one in Jared Cook. Now he has another one. Now he has to figure out how to get the football consistently to Delanie Walker, because this is a guy that can make plays in the passing game for you. I thought the Tennessee Titans came out and were active and aggressive in free agency. They needed to be. They're not finished. They have more work to do. But again, a great sign for a team coming out and being aggressive and doing the things that they need to do to help improve their football team. Another team that I thought had a very solid day one, the St. Louis Rams. Look, nothing earth-shattering, nothing, out of this world. They didn't go out and spend money like crazy like the Miami Dolphins or the Cleveland Browns, but they went out, they made some solid moves. They retained the services of William Hayes, and I thought that was a big priority for the St. Louis Rams. This is a guy that got you 7 sacks last year. Not a lot of people know about William Hayes, but he's a guy in that defensive end rotation. You already got Quinn and Long out there really applying pressure from the edges. It's always nice to be able to slide another guy in there and have him get pressure on the quarterback. He did just that for this Rams team, getting 7 sacks. You can't let 7 sacks just walk away. They re-signed him. I thought that was a great move on their part. Then they went out and got themselves Jared Cook Jr., the tight end. And so that lets me know that they're not sold on Michael Kendricks. They feel like Michael Kendricks won't be able to be the tight end that they drafted him to be. Maybe he's a solid blocker, but pass catching wise, he can't get it done. And so they went and got, to me, one of the most underrated, most talented tight ends in the league in Jared Cook Jr. And so huge move. And they have Jake Long in their facility. If the St. Louis Rams really want to hit a home run, because right now I feel like they just hit a double with re-signing William Hayes and getting Jared Cook. That's a double. But if you want to clean this thing up and hit a home run, get Jake Long. Don't allow him to leave your facility without agreeing to a deal. You get Jake Long, and I feel like the St. Louis Rams have come out in the first 2 days of free agency and hit a home run. But right now in day one, they hit a solid double, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, here's another team that I think went about their business really human-like. I really like what the Eagles did. Very quiet, efficient, and clean day for the Philadelphia Eagles. Very efficient. You look at the Patrick Chung signing, much better safety than anything they had on their roster. And Patrick Chung isn't going to break the bank. You're not going to have to pay a lot of money for Patrick Chung. Now, it makes sense. Guess where he went to college? Yeah, Oregon. Guess who's his head coach? Yeah, Chip Kelly. Guess who was his coach at Oregon? Chip Kelly. See me putting the pieces of the puzzle together? It makes sense, though. Patrick Chung back with his old college coach in Philadelphia. And so that's a solid move for the Eagles. This is a team that has had safety issues ever since the departure of Brian Dawkins. They haven't had stability at the safety position. Maybe Patrick Chung can help them take steps towards getting that continuity and production out of the safety position. You look at another signing that I really liked. A lot of people don't know about Bradley Fletcher. Here's a guy that got injured in the 2012 season, really didn't play for the Rams. Really solid corner. And the Eagles went out and made the splash moves 2 seasons ago in the offseason. Here's a quiet move that no one's talking about. No one even really knows who this guy is, yet he's a solid defender. And I'm telling you what, if he comes back healthy, the Eagles just got themselves a steal in Bradley Fletcher. So then you look at another move that the Eagles made, getting the tight end / fullback James Casey out of Houston. I knew this guy was going to come off of the market quick. I told the Houston Texans faithful that, look, if you want James Casey back, you need to make a play for him before free agency starts, because there are going to be a lot of teams looking for his services. He's a very versatile guy. The Texans moved him to fullback. He didn't make any complaints. He just went out and got his job done at the fullback position. But yet, he's still in the body and mold of a tight end. And so there's a lot of versatility there. And I knew someone was going to jump on that opportunity to get this guy quickly. Didn't know it was going to be day one, but the Eagles saw a lot of potential in James Casey. They snatched him up. Another solid move by the Eagles. And then you look at Isaac Sopoaga, the defensive tackle from San Francisco. Here you go, another guy that's a veteran player that can get it done in the trenches. Tough, hard-nosed guy that can be solid for you down there. Another solid move. The Eagles had a very clean and efficient day in day one. Not a lot of people are talking about what the Eagles were able to do, but I'm talking to you about it and telling you that the Eagles made their roster better tenfold in day one of free agency. And not to forget, they rid themselves of Nnamdi Asomugha as well. So you get rid of more dead weight. and you add a lot of value to your roster. I thought the Eagles had a very efficient day one of free agency. You look at another team that, oh man, I tell you what, it must have been a nightmare for Ravens fans. And look, I posed the question the day after the Super Bowl. I foresaw this coming. And again, I am a guy that loves to say, I told you so, but I'm not going to say that because I'm not saying that this is actually going to hurt them in the long run. But what I am saying is, right now in the short term, man, it looks bad. It feels bad if you're a Ravens fan. But I asked the question, and I never got an answer, and I think I'm starting to get an answer. But you won't know until the season starts and we get into the meat and potatoes of the 2013 NFL season before we really have an answer. But I posed a question, and I'm still waiting for an answer, and it's starting to look like this answer might be the answer that Ravens fans didn't want to give me. But I asked, after you won the Super Bowl, did you sell your soul to the devil? Did you make a deal with the devil to win that Super Bowl? I asked you, did you make a deal with the devil? Because right now, it looks like you may have done just that. No more Ray Lewis, no more Matt Burke. They have both retired. You knew you probably weren't going to get Paul Kruger back. Okay, fine. You knew you probably weren't going to get Kerry Williams back. You were perfectly fine with that. But not getting Donnell L.A.B back? Who saw that one coming? When was that ever in the plans? When was that ever in the cards for the Baltimore Ravens? When was that ever discussed, not getting Donnell L.A.B back? And you know, everyone wants to talk about the Joe Flacco deal as the hang-up and why the Ravens are losing so many free agents. This Joe Flacco deal has nothing to do with that. Okay, maybe it has just a tiny, teeny little bit to do with it. But this is more about that new window that the NFL has afforded agents to have before free agency. The 3 days that the agents have to go seek out deals from other teams before free agency, it's what did the Ravens in. Donnell L.A.B's agent went to Miami, and the Dolphins knocked his doors off. They blew his doors off. They said, look, okay, listen to this. We want Donnell L.A.B in the worst way. We're willing to fork over $35 million over 5 years. Can the Ravens match that? And his agent ran to Donnell with that and said, hey, look what the Dolphins are trying to give us. They want to give us 5 years, $35 million. He said, okay, well, I still want to see what Baltimore has to offer because I really want to stay in Baltimore. And his agent said, okay, well, let's go to Baltimore and see what they have for us. And Donnell L.A.B goes to Baltimore and said, look, I got a really lucrative deal from another team. What do you have? And the Ravens said, okay, Donnell, look, listen to what we have for you. Check this out. 5 years, $23 million. How does that sound? And Donnell L.A.B said, what? 5 years, $23 million? Do you know that I have an offer on the table right now for 5 years, $35 million? The Ravens said, what? $35 million? Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Been great having you on our team. But if you got a deal for $35 million over 5 years from another franchise, you best go ahead and pack your bags and start walking. So, I mean, that's how it ended up. This guy was supposed to be back in Baltimore, but for that kind of money, the Ravens had already drawn a line in the sand. And they had already said, look, this is what we're paying for X said player. If we can't get him back at this amount of money, then we won't get him back. They probably said the same thing for Paul Kruger. They probably said the same thing for Donnell L.A.B. And when those deals were announced, the Ravens said, man, we weren't even close. And by all indications, the Ravens weren't close on Donnell L.A.B. And I know they weren't going to pay $40 million for Paul Kruger. So the Ravens right now aren't getting their stuff back. There's no more Anquan Bolden. There's going to be no more Kerry Williams. There's already no Paul Kruger or Donnell L.A.B. You're losing your stuff left and right. And look, in the long run, it might be for the best. Because that's a lot of money to tie up into some guys that are still budding stars. They're not stars yet. They're budding stars. They have the potential to be stars. But that's a lot of money to pay for potential. And so the Ravens might have made the right decisions, but I tell you what, When you're trying to repeat as a Super Bowl champion, it's already hard in itself to repeat. Try doing it without 5 or 6 or 7 of your most integral parts of your team from the season when you won the Super Bowl a year ago. Try doing it without half of your team. And I know I'm being a little bit hypercritical because it's 7 guys. It's not half of your team. It's not half of your roster. But these guys were impact players for the Ravens. Kruger was a guy that got pressure for the Ravens when no one else on the team was getting pressure. L.A.B, hands down, their best linebacker on their team. No questions about it. Kerry Williams, arguably their best corner on their team, especially after Ladarius Webb went down. He had to hold it down. None of these guys will be back in the 2013 season. Then your best receiver, Anquan Boldin, who got it done in the postseason for you. He was on a torrid pace in the postseason, gone. Couldn't work out the numbers with him. You wanted to restructure. He wasn't having it. You had to trade him. So now you're staring at a team full of guys that didn't help you win the Super Bowl. Like Chris Canty, who you signed in the first day of free agency. That's a nice signing, but it doesn't lessen the blow or deaden the impact of what happened to you in day one. Tough day for the Ravens, and you may have, in fact, made a deal with the devil. You just didn't tell anyone about it, but it looks like you made that deal with the devil, and he's here to recoup some of the items you promised him when you signed over that deal for that Super Bowl championship. Look, I say my best for last. And frankly, my best isn't the same as everyone else's. I feel like everyone made a big deal about what the Dolphins did. Everybody wanted to talk about, how the Dolphins won day one of free agency, how they went out and made a big splash. They went out and got Mike Wallace, which we all knew was going to occur. They went out and got Phillip Wheeler. They went out and re-signed Chris Clemens. And then the big kicker for everyone was the L.A.B deal because no one saw that one coming. So everyone wanted to talk about the Dolphins. But for me, for my money, who had the best day one of free agency, who I felt like really went out and made a lot of quality moves to help improve their roster, was the Indianapolis Colts. My gosh. How about all the moves they made? They were the most busiest team in day one of free agency, and it wasn't a lot of the prettiest moves you've ever seen, but it was a lot of solid moves for a franchise that needed a lot of solid moves to be done. I mean, you go out and you address a lot of needs on this team. This team overachieved in 2012. Let's face it. They were not an 11-win team. But when you play Jacksonville, when you play Tennessee, when you play a lot of the bottom feeders around the National Football League, and you're able to pick them off, it's okay. I'm not going to knock the Indianapolis Colts for doing what they were supposed to do, beating the teams they were supposed to beat. But they needed to upgrade this roster, and they knew it. And their GM, Grigsby, went out and spent the money to do it. Impressive. You're talking about a team that's playing a 3-4 defense. They know they don't have all the pieces in place to play that 3-4 defense. They weren't getting enough pressure on the quarterback. So what do? They go out and get Eric Walden, a guy that's stout against the run and can get pressure on the quarterback. And then they go get a little-known commodity. This is a guy that I talked about in the video for the Indianapolis Colts. Specifically, I talked about Lawrence Sidbury in their market video, and I said, look, this is a guy that a lot of people don't know about in the Atlanta organization that came into the league, was a hybrid, a guy that was ultra-athletic. You saw the potential out of South Carolina. It never manifested itself in Atlanta. He had a solid season. The Atlanta Falcons never really gave him an opportunity to really get it done. And maybe he wasn't showing them enough to get on the field. I don't know what happened. All I know is this is a guy with a lot of talent. Like Michael Johnson, who came into the league with so much talent, so much raw athleticism, but didn't do anything until he was given the opportunity. I feel the same way about Lawrence Sidbury. And the Colts are going to get this guy on the cheap. And I think he can come in and be a guy that can give you 8 or 9 sacks. So right there, you got value. Eric Walden, Lawrence Sidbury. Okay, you need to protect your quarterback. Your biggest investment on your roster is Andrew Luck. And he was running for his life way too often in 2012. So what do? They go out and they get another little-known commodity in Donald Thomas from the Patriots. Here's a guy that was a backup, but in that backup role was integral in the success of the Patriots in the 2012 season. Without him in the interior of that line backing up all those guys who were injured, the Patriots might have self-destruct. But Donald Thomas came in and was steady at the guard positions for the Patriots. Teams around the league took notice. Now he's going to get the opportunity to start, and I think he's going to do one whale of a job in Indianapolis. They weren't done yet, though, along that offensive line. Joe Reitz and those guys weren't good at guard. Neither were the tackles. Winston Justice and all those guys who were paraded out at tackle for the Colts. They needed to upgrade. You got Costanzo on one side. Now you have Gosher Cherilus on the other. Here's a solid guy in Detroit. He has his inconsistent moments, but Gosher Cherilus is definitely an upgrade and one that the Colts needed to go out and make. And then they weren't done yet. They go out and get a very good corner that not a lot of people know anything about. And you notice the theme here. A lot of their moves are guys that not a lot of people know anything about. And those are the hidden gems in free agency, and that's what the good teams do. They go out and they find the hidden gems. It's okay to go get a front runner. It's okay to go out and be like everyone else and go get the guy that's commanding a lot of attention in free agency. The one that everyone's salivating over. The one that everyone's willing to fork over big dollars for. It's okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with going with the status quo. But where you make your hay in the National Football League is finding the hidden gems. And I feel like the Indianapolis Colts in day one found the hidden gems. They went and got Greg Toller from Arizona. Now you ask yourself, who is Greg Toller and why are you getting so enthusiastic about him? This is a guy that can play the cornerback position if he can just stay healthy. And I'm always willing to roll the dice on a guy if he can stay healthy, if he can play. If you're a guy that's always banged up but you can play, I'm always willing to take a chance on you because I know that the risk is usually not going to be greater than the reward is. If this guy can stay healthy, Greg Toller can be a top 10 corner in this league. That's how good Greg Toller can be. And I think the Indianapolis Colts know that. They were willing to go spend the money to get him and see if he can stay healthy and play that good of football for them like he did for Arizona when he was on the field. So I feel like the Indianapolis Colts had a great day, not to mention they re-signed Darius Butler, which I thought was a great move on their part because I thought he was going to be wrestled away by the Chicago Bears. But no, they signed him back, and so now you've got solid corner play. You've got a better offensive line than you did the day before free agency started. And now you've got guys outside to rush after the quarterback in Eric Walden, Lawrence Sidbury, and oh, don't forget about Robert Mathis. So now your 3-4 defense is starting to look a lot better. And if you're the Indianapolis Colts, you, my friends, were the winners, the true winners, in my estimation, of day one. And that's going to do it for the day one recap in the market. And I tell you what, I think some teams went out and really helped themselves. I think some teams overspent for some items in the market. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all that matters is you get your guy. The person that you were seeking, the person that you were going after, you got him. And that's all that matters. Doesn't matter what you had to pay to get him. As long as you got him, you got him. And that's all that matters in free agency. Getting your guy. Because at the end of the day, you have your eyes on someone. And you want to be able to go out and get that guy. And if you got to spend a little bit of extra money to do so, by all means, get the guy that you think can help you get to the next level. Take that next step. And that's what teams did in day one of free agency, and it was fun to watch. But keep in mind, buyer beware, because there are no returns in the market. And I will see you tomorrow. Please be sure to subscribe to the page if you haven't already done so. I'm your host, Lou, and this has been day one in the market.
The market.